Initial Thoughts is a spoiler-free movie review series. All opinions are my own. Hi everyone, welcome back to Initial Thoughts, a series in which we talk about films as and when they are released. Today's film we're talking about is Five Nights at Freddy's, which is directed by Emma Tammy and stars Josh Hutcherson, Elizabeth Leal, and Matthew Lillard. So Five Nights at Freddy's, a very interesting franchise, IP. Everything to do with Five Nights at Freddy's is quite interesting, how it became to be such a recognisable name, certainly in this younger generation, and certainly in the last 10 years or so, or almost a decade. It's been one of the more recognisable new IPs we've had. And of course, being created by Scott Cawthon and having such a hand in everything that is Five Nights at Freddy's, certainly has such an influence in all the decisions that are made, the story, the lore, and everything like that. And the lore and the story about these games, because let's be honest, if you've played any of them, and certainly the early ones, story being told, it isn't story heavy. It effectively is a jump scare simulator with a little bit of backstory. And when I say a little bit, there's a phone call in the first game that kind of saturates and sprinkles a little bit of story and a little bit of, you make up your own lore. You make up your own theories about what could happen. And obviously that led to a very interesting and probably one of the most unique fan bases in that sense, because the fan bases have had such a hand in what has become of Five Nights at Freddy's. It became such a long and deep and had a lot of depth in the lore. The stories that is being told in each of these games. And again, I do use that word quite lightly, because that also will apply when we talk about the movie here. But the story, a lot of it is what could have happened. A lot of it, does that mean this? Does this mean this? Is that connected to that? But not a lot of it is spelled out to the audience. A lot of it is subtlety. Whether that's you make up your own mind, whether that's the decision by the creator and the people working on these games, you make up your own mind. Let's not do so much story. Let's let the fans run wild with it. And it is it's one of the more unique, as I say, in that way. And that was where I think I not that I was a massive fan of the franchise, but I could certainly appreciate what it is. Certainly that early time, kind of summer 2014 when the first game dropped, and you had all the YouTubers like Markiplier and the Game Theory, and there was a lot of things that built from that and became what it is today. Not just through Scott Cawthon. It's kind of all of that as a package made Five Nights at Freddy's one of those real staples of this current generation's IPs. And then, of course, when things get very popular, what happens? We go, let's make a movie, let's make a television show, let's make something that's in another form of media for the same thing. We've had so many video game adaptations at this point, with some of the newer ones actually being pretty good. Things like the Last of Us television series was really good. Things like Super Mario and Sonic, while maybe not for me personally, I can certainly see the appeal, and if I was that age, or if you're taking kids to see them that age, there is that appeal and there is that love. So it can be done well, and it can be done in a way that effectively connects with an audience in the cinema, in a way that it connects on the game, or whatever the case may be. But that was something that it kind of was always touted that there will be a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. All the way back when the first or second game had just kind of finished its run, and it was nearly, I think it was between the second and third, there was real talk that Blumhouse was going to acquire the rights. I don't know if it was specifically Blumhouse, but there was going to be a horror studio that would take the rights and build a movie franchise out of it. And then nothing happened. The game kept being released. There's been lots since, over the last, I don't know, many games they're deep now. There's maybe 8 Five Nights at Freddy's games, maybe more than that. But there was always a demand for the movie, I felt. Not from general fans, but of just movie-going fans. But there always was that, and I always had it in the back of my mind, if they do make a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, they're bound to, if they do it right, this will make a fortune. This will make a lot of money. This will be the start of a new franchise. And with things like Blumhouse already having movies like Insidious, which had its 5th entry this year. I have no doubt that there's at least going to be 3 of these Five Nights at Freddy's movies. There's certainly is, in the sense of it will be a franchise. It's the kind of movie that's marketable as a franchise, and not to mention the toys and merchandise that can be sold in regards to the characters. I mean, this is going to be big money. This will rack in. I have no doubt in my mind about that, no matter how well the movie performs. But all that stuff said, and I know I've kind of went a lot deep into all that stuff, we're here to talk about the movie side of things. And that's a bit of context of where I am with Five Nights at Freddy's. As I say, I like it. I like what it is. I think the early games certainly are effective. I think the first game is really good. I think as far as a horror game goes, it's in its simplistic nature is really good. And it kind of loses its way as the franchise goes. But the first game's good. And in theory, I thought, okay, so if that's the case, the first movie, if they're sticking to, and again I use that word loosely and lightly, the word story, maybe this could be pretty good. But coming in, I didn't go into Five Nights at Freddy's the movie with serious expectation, but there was a hope that this would be pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good. So, did I enjoy this movie? Did I come into this and come into it skeptical? Did I leave disappointed? Did I leave happy? Here's where I land on that. I enjoyed Five Nights at Freddy's for what it is. Flaws and all. I think there's a lot of people that will go into this movie and they will be so ready to hate on it. They will hate the movie before the movie has even started. I think there is a lot of that, and there'll be people ready to bash this. But there's such a core fan base of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I think most people would get what they want out of this if you are a fan. And they may go, oh, well, it's slightly different from this part of the lore, and this is different, and this is different. But of course that has to happen. It has to be put into a concise and more linear manner for the movie. Because you can't have a movie that just is jump scares and then there's no story and you just make it up yourself, because that doesn't work. They have to put the story into more of a cohesive nature for this. And I think they actually did pretty good. I thought it summarised the early story well. I thought the characters were okay. And starting with Josh Hutcherson, I mean, I've only seen him in Hunger Games, as probably similar to a lot of yourselves. I mean, he's fine. He's okay in the movie. He's our lead. I don't know that there's too many parts in it when I would say I was rooting for him as a character. And then also in Elizabeth Leal's character as the kind of security guard cop that is interacts and plays a part in the story. I've only ever seen her really in You, the Netflix series with Penn Badgley. She's pretty good as well. Matthew Lillard, of course, Shaggy, coming back to movies in that way. Only really seen him in things like Scooby-Doo and, of course, the first Scream, which is obviously maybe his most iconic role for that. So he certainly has been a staple of horror so far. So for him to be in this, that's a pretty worthy inclusion for a new horror franchise being born. So the performances overall, I would say, were fine. I don't think there was any that were above par, but none below par either. I think they were just kind of what you would expect in this movie. But here's one of my major issues with this. And Five Nights at Freddy's, it's weird because I don't really know what the tone they're going for. And I'll give a bit of context to that. So in this movie, there's certain scenarios that are horror side of things. Gore, death, people getting hurt, etc., etc. And they can be quite brutal. But then on the flip side, there's portions of this movie and parts of it that are so... It's like watching a child's film with the kids and the animatronics. And of course that maybe plays into the nature of what they're going for. But that switch in tone, that switching back and forth in tone, I thought kind of hampered the film a little bit. Only because if you're going into this and you're going, I want to see a horror film, I want to get scared because it's Halloween, it's October, I want to get in that Halloween feel, I want to come out of a movie being terrified, I really don't think that you're going to get that. Even the most... How do I put this? Even someone who is not a horror fan, doesn't watch any horror movies, just is not their thing, only watch kids' films, I think even they would be able to tolerate this, because there isn't any bit of this movie that is like a terrifying part. There's some bits of brutality, there's that part, but I don't mean in a Saw way. I just mean it's strange, and that was something that certainly the middle act, certainly the middle part of the film, there's this real tone shift, and it goes from being quite nearly like a slasher movie, where these people are being hunted by, of course, the animatronics, and then you flip back to them playing with a young child, and it's all very fun and enjoyable, and there isn't any animosity, there isn't any hostility then. And that was such a strange... And at first I was kind of like, okay, well this is a strange... We're going a bit left field here, this is a bit off what I expected. I thought we were just going to stay on the horror side. I just think it could have been handled a little bit better, but it wasn't a make or break part for me, but it was just something that I think maybe let the film fall down a little bit. And again, I've mentioned a little bit about the stories, or the story being told and how it connects to the story of the game in some ways, but also takes a bit of liberties with other things. The story was fine. Again, nothing that's going to really blow you away. And I think that's probably the overall indictment I can have of Five Nights at Freddy's. There isn't anything that you'd go, oh, this is fantastic. But there's also nothing that you can really go, this is awful, what am I even watching here? Because it's kind of just middle of the road. It's enjoyable for what it is. If you're a fan of the franchise, it's about as much as you could hope for in a concise story side away for a movie. It doesn't have the depth of lore that the games have, and of course, you couldn't do that. I think even over like 10 movies, you couldn't really concisely put into place each part of the lore and break it down movie by movie. You have to take liberties, and you have to make it concise and an effective way of storytelling. Is it effective? I mean, it's fine. And I think that's where I kind of lie with Five Nights at Freddy's. I enjoyed this for what it was. I didn't think it was brilliant. I didn't think, I didn't come out of it going, this is a real fantastic, brilliant movie. I'm so glad they've made that. But here's the other part, and I suppose I wouldn't think too many reviewers always take this into effect, and of course this applies to different cinemas and different theatres and things. That was the busiest screening I've been at this year on a midweek. I saw this on the Wednesday evening, and for it to be almost packed out, middle of the week, not even on a Friday, not even on a Saturday, it just shows the level of love that people have for this franchise already. And I have no doubt, you see, even if the general consensus is that Five Nights at Freddy's the movie is terrible, it's like a 3 or 4 out of 10, and Metacritic gives it a really bad score, and blah blah blah, no matter what, you will definitely get Five Nights at Freddy's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know if you'll get as many as that, but you'll certainly get a sequel. There will 1,000,000% be more than one of these movies, because this will make a fortune. People love it. I enjoy it for what it is. The movie is not a spectacle, but let's be real. Who went into Five Nights at Freddy's going, this is going to be movie of the year? Who went into this saying this is going to be Oscar worthy or blah? It just is not going to happen. It's not that. It's a little bit switch off your brain popcorn film. And for that, it's a decent time at the cinema. Nothing fantastic, but nothing awful. And am I there? Will I be there if they're going to do a franchise? Am I interested if they do make sequels? Yeah, truthfully. Because I think, while there's certainly things in here they did okay, I think even they will be able to acknowledge that there's a few things in this movie that maybe with Scott Cawthon, for example, he written and produced, of course, a lot of this, and for him to make a lot of these decisions, a lot of it's probably new to him, and to do the storytelling in an effective way, I'm sure there's things that he'll learn from this and hopefully improve in the sequel. That might not happen, but let's hope that is the case. A lot of this movie was fun. Fun in a weird way. Tonal shifts aside, Five Nights at Freddy's is a decently enjoyable time. Not a spectacle, but not certainly not as bad as some people are saying it is. It is an enjoyable time. You could probably take your kids to see it. Probably. It's a strange one. I think even the Movie Certification Society, or whatever they're called, didn't even know what they could give this. Could they make this like a 12 certificate? Is it an 18? Is it a 15? Who knows? But I think in the end they decided to go with like a 15A. And that's probably about right, because it certainly doesn't have it's not a real horror movie. You're not going to get terrified or scared by this, even for younger children. And there was a few younger children at our screening when we went to see it, and none of them were jumping or terrified or squealing or being jump scared. It's not that kind of movie, even though there is jump scares. And that's the only thing. There isn't really an effective horror side of this. For me, of course, that's subjective. It's a bit like going to a comedy and saying, I didn't really laugh at it. For this, I think Five Nights at Freddy's is fine. Let's get to rating time. As you can see, IMDb's I'm a little bit more than that. I think I'll be a bit more generous with Five Nights at Freddy's. It's a decently enjoyable time. I'm going to give Five Nights at Freddy's a 6.5 out of 10. I would recommend it. On a second rewatch, I don't know that it would hold up as good on a rewatch, in truth. But if I did go back and see it, it may bump it up to a 7, or if I liked it a lot less, I might drop it down to a 6. But that's kind of where I am. That's why I landed on a 6.5. I think that's as fair as I can give it. It certainly isn't any higher than a 7, and it certainly isn't any lower than a 6. I think people being lower than a 6 is very harsh. Very harsh. I think people are so quick to bash on this, and when so many people enjoy it, and it's not a cardinal sin. Like, it's not like one of those movies that we have seen a hell of a lot more movies that have been far worse from bigger franchises this year, so let's not be silly. Five Nights at Freddy's is a decently enjoyable time. Give it a go. If you do enjoy it, I think you will. I think you will for what it is. I think if you go in with a very cynical head, which I try not to do as much, I think you could have fun with this movie. But yeah, that's my thoughts on this movie. That's my thoughts on Five Nights at Freddy's. And yeah, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day for listening to me talking about the movies. If you want to stick around and let me know you enjoyed it, leave a like. Subscribe for more like this. I mean, there's lots of movies coming between now and the end of the year on this. On TikTok, I've been quite active there. A lot of mini reviews and things like that. So if you want to follow me with there, it'd be really appreciated. And if you do, I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye, guys. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Before you go, here are some of my other videos. For updates and information on upcoming videos, the best place to find us is my Twitter. Much love, everyone.